Hi, my name is Jonelle. Welcome to my channel. This is where I yap about things like crafting, cons, cosplaying, gardening, and all those things that make me happy or unhappy. And today I am yapping about my experience at DreamCon this year. And I'm also going to talk about DreamCon in comparison to Blerdcon because they're both black owned cons that I have visited this year and in previous years. And I just want this video to be an opportunity for me to talk about my experience, and also for like as people plan to go to these cons, what to expect, and if they're on the fence about deciding which ones, maybe helping them like arrive to their decision. So, starting off, this was my second DreamCon. The one that I originally went to was in 2023, back when it was in Austin, Texas. And that was in the middle of July. It was very hot, but it was smaller, and it was a very different vibe than this year when it was in Houston, Texas. And it was early in the year, late May, early June, and the weather was a little bit different. But the con was definitely larger, and I know that DreamCon is only going to get more and more popular. And the thing about anime conventions, or just conventions in general, they are a large gathering of people. And for some people, their comfortability with large crowds affects their experiences at cons. And so, DreamCon, I still haven't seen like the final-ish numbers on that, but I would say it was easily about 30 to maybe 40,000 people there. And that's a number of people that I am comfortable being around with, because back in when I was in school, it was when like game day in Athens, you'd have like 90,000 people. So it'd be about a third of that crowd, but in a smaller space was a little bit overwhelming for me because like I'm not normally in large crowds anymore, and I still was able to move around. The first day was a little bit chaotic because of the process of getting in line to pick up my badge. Did take a little bit of a long time, and it was a little confusing, like navigating the hotel to get the badges. But overall, once I got through that, which I think was like the worst part of the con, I would say like Friday at DreamCon was a lot of people bumping into me type of nightmare. And, I'm glad I didn't just like get overwhelmed and be like, I'm not gonna go enjoy the con the rest of the weekend, because DreamCon was pretty fun. It was. It just was different. I've been going to cons since I was in high school over 10 years ago, and I've watched things change. Like my first con was actually called Seishun Con. Rest in peace. No longer happens anymore, and it used to happen in like Warner Robins, Georgia. And it was a very, very small little hotel con full of weebs, not that many black people, and it was very like intimate. And I do realize I kind of like more intimate cons because Dream, it's so many people that you really don't see the same person twice. Or if you do, you're not really sure if you saw them twice. I don't know if there are a lot of chances to actually like make friends while you were at Dream. And I say that because it was a lot going on, just a lot. My experience was I go through this long line of getting my badge. I think it took me about an hour. And for some people, I heard it took them 2 hours to get it. And it's like we're immediately ushered out of the hotel where we're getting our badges. And it does not feel like the people, like that hotel is welcoming us. And they don't seem excited that there are a bunch of anime and pop media fans in their space. Versus when I was at Blerdcon, it seemed like the hotel staff was excited for us to be there. People, like even the staff were wearing like anime shirts, and they were very welcoming and kind, and they told us where to go, like, and also was stretched across 2 different hotels. So even like the other hotel staff, like they weren't as used to us being there, but they were still like excited. Be like, oh yeah, this is in that room and that's in that room. At DreamCon, it felt very much like the staff was like, what is this? What's happening? Ew. Even like the con took place in the George R. Brown Convention Center. And to get in the convention center, you had to go through metal detectors, you had to get a bag search. Perfectly fine by me. But I heard some of my friends tell me that some of them didn't even, like the security guards didn't even check for everybody's badges because they're like, oh, you're in cosplay, just coming in. And I heard it was also consistent where they were throwing out people's drinks. But there was literally like a Coca-Cola truck outside of DreamCon giving out free Cokes with people's names on it, except for my name, because my name is just so rare. But um I heard the security crew being like, well, I guess they should come in with the drinks because Coke's giving out free drinks. And I'm like, so y'all don't even know what y'all are doing? Like, because there were some security checkpoints where they were searching for badges. You know, they're like, I need to see badges. I need to see this. I need to see that. And other security folks who were like, oh, okay, you're in cosplay. Come in. Like, it just felt inconsistent with, like, logistics and with staffing. And that is something that is not the fault of the people who are hosting DreamCon. Like, I feel like a lot of the complaints or that people have of Dream are things that the actual planners couldn't have really foreseen. I do kind of fault them for the badge line because, like I said, it was so long, and like you were like winding through the hotel, and there's crowds going one way, and it didn't quite make sense. But DreamCon, like they knew how many badges they sold, like and like they had those limited drops, and even leading up to it when they announced Megan Thee Stallion was coming, they they knew there was going to be a large surge of people, so they should have had more options. Like one thing that's kind of spoiled me about being in Atlanta is that MomoCon and Anime Week in Atlanta, and I think DragonCon might also do this, but they have remote badge pickup on the weeks leading up to the con. And it's not just in the area closest, like in Atlanta, like they work with comic book shops to host like they'll pop up one Saturday and be like, you can pick up your badge at this comic book shop. And it's great because it drives commerce to the store, and also it kind of helps with the lines. Like Momo, you also have early badge pickup the day before, and if you're an exhibitor or a panelist, you know, you can come during setup. With DreamCon, I'm not sure if they had Thursday badge pickup. I don't really think they did, but it definitely felt like Friday was like this huge rush. And another thing about Friday just stressing me out as the first day of the con was that there were so many streamers at DreamCon. Like, people were joking and calling it StreamCon. I totally get it. Because when I first went 2 years ago, it didn't really feel like people were streaming that much. Like, you knew people were doing it. Like, you knew it was a con for YouTubers and content creators, which is fine. And, like, you know, this year at MomoCon, I saw people with the walking sticks and, you know, some people with the mics asking questions, but it wasn't obstructing the flow of traffic. People weren't pulling stunts just to film. But at Dream, there were a lot of people who were filming like everywhere. And so I'm being bumped and jostled around this crowd, and I'm being bumped and jostled into people's like cameras that they're just live streaming and filming the whole thing. And there was one incident where I was talking to my friend, like we're in conversation, and a streamer comes up to us in the middle of the conversation with their camera, like already filming, you know, and they go to my friend and they're like, oh, you're so pretty, say hi to the camera. And my friend is dazed because they're like, you know, I'm in the middle of talking to somebody and here's somebody with a camera, and the person walks away, doesn't say who they are, doesn't say their streamer tag or anything like that. Like, that's what made it a little like weird and unnerving about the culture around DreamCon. And like, I go back to saying I cannot fault the people who run Dream for building a culture like that, but it felt very inauthentic and it felt a little staged at times. Like, there would be times where we're trying to walk through the crowds and then somebody will randomly start fighting just for filming content. There was also incidents where celebrities would walk through the crowd and people would like push people for it. Like when Kai Cenat walked by, people like were literally like pushing people out the way, and people were running like a mob to see Kai. And that was so different from like when I went in 2023, and there were a couple of like famous celebrities and YouTubers I saw just casually. I casually saw them walking through the crowd, and you know, it might be like, oh hey, what's up? It's this person or whatever. But at Dream, it felt like they would just walk through. People would be like pushing and everything. And to some people, I can understand how that's an issue with safety. Like, I totally get it. And that's one of those things that could be overwhelming for somebody who wants to go to a con, or very exciting if you want to go to Dream and see people that you've been, you know, you follow their Patreons or their YouTubes or their Twitch accounts, and you get to see them in person. That can be exciting. I just didn't like how Dream announced things at the last minute. Like, you had to use the app to keep up with what was going on. And my issue with the app was that the app would randomly get updated. Because, you know, if you're planning on going to a con, you want an idea of like what you're doing in the schedule. And that's something that people have been complaining about for years. They're like, you know, get the schedule sooner. And now that there's better scheduling software, people can have like the guidebook or whatever app they're using updated very, very soon. And like, I was a panelist at both Blerdcon and DreamCon this year. And my panel at Blerdcon was confirmed in, I think it was confirmed like 2 or 3 months before. And then like the app was available like a month before with the final schedule. And I think, you know, the guest of honor was Janelle Monáe. And I know she was confirmed like about a month ahead of time. So, you know, with Blerdcon, because you can buy tickets throughout the year, you know, there's that surge to buy tickets after they announce like special guests, which is perfectly fine. But with DreamCon, they already had their final ticket drop after they announced Megan Thee Stallion. They only announced her, I think maybe a week or two before she came. And then they also opened up tickets to be sold a week before DreamCon, so anybody could have bought a ticket, which was kind of annoying because, you know, there was this whole like rush. You gotta be logged onto your computer at this time to buy from the ticket drop. And the fact that it was just like anybody could buy a ticket right before, it was like, well, why did y'all put us through the stress of putting like, you know, this thing on our calendar 3 months in advance to go get this ticket at this time? Like, I had a party on the day that one of the drops were, and I didn't think about it. I just wanted to have a party, but I had like friends who relate to the party because they were like, I have to make sure I'm online at this time to buy this ticket. Like, they're waiting in their car because they think that it's gonna sell out, and then the tickets don't sell out, and there's this logistical nightmare that happens at registration, and there's crowd control issues throughout the con. So it almost felt like they oversold tickets. Because like we're going through the vendor hall, I can't even stop and look at vendors and what they're selling because of how many people are walking through. And so that's something you should consider when you're going to Dream. Like, how much do you really like crowds and dealing with people? And one thing I did like about Blerdcon was that it felt like family. And there were events that I didn't get a chance to go to because they were full. That happens at every con. People say, oh, like DreamCon should be called LineCon because of how many lines there and how full things were. Dream was full. A lot of events were pretty full. I think what they should have had was more programming in general. Another thing that I did not like about Dream's like programming was that a lot of the programming was like very debate oriented. Like, there was like people saying their hot takes and then people arguing over their hot takes. Waifu wars, where people are like arguing over whose waifu is the baddest. and wholesome hot takes, and people are like still arguing over it. Like, it really felt like there were so many panels geared towards people just arguing and yelling at each other over like who's strongest or which anime is the best. And I remember when I was putting in my application for my panel, the programming guidelines specifically said don't have versus panels. So to see so many that were similar was kind of a turn off. And I think like there was like 9 programming rooms, and because of the volume of the con, they probably could have gotten away with like 15 or 20 programs happening at the same time. And also the programs did not start until noon, which is like a little bad for the early risers. Because I came from the East Coast, which is an hour ahead of Texas. And so, my natural rhythm, I'm getting up closer towards 9 or 10. I'm ready to go to the con by like 10:30 or 11. And there's literally nothing to do. The vendor alley's not open. There's some gaming happening, but that's it, like just gaming. And that's another thing to consider when you're looking at which cons you want to go to, because it's not just the panels and workshops. Those are a great component of cons, but also the rooms where you can de-stress and unplug and connect with people. DreamCon did have tabletop gaming. They had a manga and puzzle library. According to my sources, there wasn't a lot of manga in the library, but there were a lot of puzzles. And the puzzles were actually from a Black-owned puzzle company called Puzzles of Color, and I like that. But these rooms were smaller, and I would say a little bit more inaccessible because they're all the way up on the 3rd floor. So like, let's say if you're at the con, you're overstimulated, and you need to go to the tabletop gaming room or puzzle room, you gotta go like all the way upstairs. And they were kind of like close to like really long lines for like the main event rooms. So to me, they didn't seem like that far away from like all the action. And another thing about cons is like the food variety. So Houston itself has a lot of good food. And for me, I am pretty able-bodied, so I wouldn't mind walking 20 to 30 minutes out from the con to go check out food. Like there was like 2 or 3 streets over, there was a lot of like bars and stuff. Also, the weird thing about Houston and everything is like there's a highway in the middle of everything. So like the George R. Brown Convention Center is underneath the highway. So, you can't just like walk. You have to like walk out of the convention center and go around this entire convention center to go behind it, to go to the street behind it. Fine. But in terms of the variety of food inside of the con, no bueno. There were a lot of like bar setups there, which I appreciate. Even though I did not want to drink any of those cocktails that were offered, I like that it was an option. Like Megan Thee Stallion actually just released a spirit. I cannot remember if it's a tequila. I think it's tequila. Or maybe it's a vodka. She released a spirit brand that was debuted at DreamCon, I believe. I wasn't quite sure, like, because she also announced that she was releasing an anime and everyone acted surprised. But I feel like she already announced it in her Amazon biopic. But they had like setups with her drink and like a cocktail, like a special Megan cocktail. But for all the people at DreamCon, like I said, it's probably about 30 to 40,000 people. The food stands were relatively sparse inside of the con and outside the con. There were only like 2 food trucks outside. And I'm like, whoa. They didn't really think this through. There was one halal brand, which I appreciate, as someone who has to be kind of picky with the meat that they eat. But, there wasn't a true diversity of like food vendors versus Blerdcon, where at Blerdcon there is a 24-hour food truck rally. And they have a plethora of options. Like I said, they have halal, they have juice brands, they have, big big meats. It's weird to call them that. Like barbecue, like they have a lot of options for people for different cuisines and different like flavor palettes if you do have dietary restrictions. At DreamCon, it was like you go all the way upstairs and there's just like this big high school looking cafeteria with food stands. And, it just seemed like there was maybe like 8 or 9 food stands in that food hall. And then there was a couple of like Chick-fil-A booths and a coffee stand that are like sprinkled throughout the convention center, but it was not enough to accommodate the crowd of people, especially since a lot of the security guards were throwing out food that you bring in. And that's one of those things where that I like the safety of having metal detectors and things like that. Because Blerdcon does not have metal detectors. They don't really have. They have people who will check your prop, I believe, and there's some crowd control and security is gonna look for your badge if you're walking. They don't want you just walking around the hotel without your badge. And at a certain point, they do want you to have like your key card with you to get in the rooms and stuff. But with it's a smaller crowd in general, so there are different like safety measures. But DreamCon was operating like it was a smaller con, and it's not. There was too many people and not enough staff. Like the DreamCon people, they did have like highlighter green staff shirts, but the ratio that I saw did not seem like enough people. And I heard some instances of people who experienced like harassment at DreamCon and just feeling safe as women. And like the badge did say cosplay is not consent, but that doesn't mean anything to the people who were there and people who naturally violate consent. And I mention those people because I think that's kind of where the disconnect is between what made DreamCon like the best that it could be. Because I was reading some of like the social media discourse after the con and before, and there was things that I agree with and things I didn't agree with. But one thing that people said was that it felt like it wasn't really about anime and pop media and being a nerd anymore. It really felt like a thing about you just being cool. And I did grow up at that like weird time where you could have been called a nerd for watching anime, but you also could have been the coolest kid watching anime. And like in my school, it was like somehow it was really the type of person you were that got called a nerd versus you just because you watched anime. And like it felt like there was a lot of people who like weren't cosplay, who would just post it up, just streaming and just talking smack, and then people who were just there just to flirt and fight, and like but it didn't feel like they were contributing to the spirit of it. Like at Blerdcon, you could like set up a game of spades and Uno, and you want to invite people to your room, and people were drinking, having a good time. And even at MomoCon, like I found Black people I could just drink and have a good time with at Momo. At Dream, I didn't really make like any like new friends. Like I went to a couple of panels and talked to some of the people next to me, which was nice. But the air of it didn't feel like I'm here to be like, oh, let's make friends. And I was also a little hurt because I had a One Piece cosplay on Saturday, which is the busiest day of the con. And if you are not familiar when you go to conventions, you wear the cosplay you are most proud of on the busiest day. And, you wear it because you want people to get the reference. And I was kind of an obscure One Piece character, but I was also like someone who was kind of like adjacent to another character. So, okay, I was Mozu. She's one of the Square Sisters from the Water 7 arc. She is a part of the Frankie pirate family. My boyfriend was Frankie. My best friend was Luffy. So we would randomly like hit like the power pose throughout the con. And of course, people got my friend being Luffy, but I was surprised that not as many people got that my boyfriend was Frankie, because like we drew the star on his arm, and he had like a can of cola with them, and his outfit like matched pretty well. Like, I mean, he wasn't wearing a blue speedo, like he was wearing blue shorts instead, but like he had like the Hawaiian shirt, and I thought that was such a huge contrast to the first time he went to DreamCon, and like the whole time people were calling him like Frankie, when he was in the cosplay that day, and this time it felt like different. Like, one person, I asked one person to take our picture, and the guy was like, "You're Mozu," and that was like the only time somebody like mentioned like the Mozu reference. And then like I posted on social media, and like my friends were like, "Oh my god, like Mozu." And I don't really go to be like famous. Like, I realized some people cosplay characters just to be seen as that character, and oh my god, let me tell y'all, I think this year people were pretty creative. There were some really popular cosplays, like Def the Kid, I think was his name. Like the I didn't watch it, but the people from Soul Eater and the Gun Girls, that was a really popular cosplay. And I saw a couple of Strawberry Shortcakes, and I was Orange Blossom on Sunday. I was really excited about that. And like, but there's a lot of variety. But like 2 or 3 years ago, when I went to cons, the Love Hashtag had people in a chokehold. Your Forger had everybody in a chokehold. So it's good that like the people who did decide to cosplay at DreamCon and at Blerdcon, like, this is why I like cosplaying with Black people, is that we are so creative. Like, the reason why I was thinking about Soul Eater, why it was so fresh in my mind, is because one person did Def the Kid with instead of doing like the white like streaks in the hair, they did like white barrettes to do like the streaks. I was like, okay, y'all got it. But I heard that there were a lot of people who went to DreamCon and made fun of people for cosplaying, and also like the intersectionality of it. Like, there were some Qs who were hopping, and like I did see a lot of Qs who were there. I was like, "What's up? Okay, okay." But me, a blue and white girly, but also, never mind. We're not going to that. But I'm a blue and white girly, so I love to see that my signals were there. But there was a video of Qs hopping and at DreamCon, and somebody was like, "Oh, what are they doing here? Like, they're not supposed to be here, and we don't do that. Black Greeks don't do that." And I'm just like, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We've been deep at cons, and it's so like there's even HBCU Con in Bowie, Maryland, and Blerdcon has like Step In and D9 meetups too. Like, we're definitely here. But when it's people who are at DreamCon to feel seen, and like they're the most popular kid on the block or whatever they're trying to prove, I think that brings down the culture of it. And I feel like DreamCon can only get better because they have the ability to get so much feedback through social media and through surveys, because it was a great con 2 years ago. It was. And this year was still a good con, but I feel like what made it more fun was me going with friends than my actual experience there. And this goes for anybody who wants to go to a convention. Like, if you're really good at living solo, fine, go and have the best time that you have by yourself. But the word con, convention, people convening, congregating together, is about meeting people with your interests and, vibing off of that and geeking out over things and making plans to see them again next year at the con. And like, the thing I liked about Blerd was just the variety of topics, and they were very like intellectual. There were a couple of panels that I went to at Dream that were kind of, I mean, okay, not kind of intellectual, but like that kind of okay, there was one that was like anime and politics that I really liked, and it was like a panel that really woke me up because I was like, yeah, anime is political, and there was a really great discussion around it. But like I said earlier, there were so many panels that was just like, whose waifu's the hottest, and then somebody tries to defend a minor to be the hottest waifu, and then it's really like, whoa, whoa, you know, at certain cons that would not fly, but at DreamCon apparently it did. Um, and I say all of this to help you form your own opinion. Like I know it probably sounds like I'm just disparaging DreamCon, but in the day, I think I might go back. Like I might give myself a year or two off. Um, it is kind of expensive to go to both Blerd and DreamCon in the same year, even though they've moved dates. And that's another thing to consider because I liked that Blerd was in March this year because I actually was able to wear more of my cosplays. And there's like, and fun thing about going to cons in the summer is yes, you can have the fishnets, thighs out, booty out, all that. But if you're trying to do a character and you don't want to burn up like Nico Robin in Alabasta with the pimp coat, it's like, yeah, you want to wear that in March in DC versus in July in Texas because you gonna burn up. You gonna burn up. Like when I went to Dream in Austin, it was 103 degrees. Yeah. So it's like all you can do is a little bikini bottom when it's that hot. But I appreciate the people who wear the bikinis no matter what weather because yes, there are people who are still wearing that in March, and I was like, God. And next year's theme for Blerdcon is Geeknik. So yeah, there'll be a lot of booty shorts, hoochie mama shorts, all those shorts happening next year in March in DC. So hopefully it's a slightly warmer so people can wear it. But that's another thing I appreciate about Blerd versus Dream is that Blerd has themes. DreamCon doesn't have themes. But I like that Dream is about like you really build what you want from it. You like the energy at DreamCon is the idea that you can do anything you want to do. I remember watching RDC World's videos right when I started college, and Mark was talking about starting a con. He was saying, I'm gonna make DreamCon. And I was like, okay, and he did. He did it. He did it as a YouTuber who was making videos in his subdivision with his friends in Fort Worth, Texas. And then it grew into this thing, like multi-million-dollar deals with Twitch and Nintendo, like all these people, like it became this thing. Like I think the first DreamCon had like 600 people, and this is year 7 or year 8, and the fact that they went from 600 people to 30,000 is amazing. Like I went to this year was MomoCon's 20th anniversary, and they had a timeline of all the MomoCons, and they were saying how it started off on Georgia Tech's campus, and each year they got bigger and bigger. And I don't think MomoCon got to 30,000 until their 15th year. And I know con culture was different, and Momo did set the precedent. Well, okay, probably Dragon Con and San Diego Comic Con did, but like these cons have built on each other to the point where at first it used to be like, oh, that's just a white person thing, or that's just somebody who stays at home and lives in their mom's basement thing, to now the cool kids are cosplaying and the cool kids are making content and reading manga and consuming media. And now just not just the cool kids, but the black kids are doing it, and now we're able to build these spaces as black people. And I heard some rumblings about HotieCon, which is supposed to be a space for black women to come together in the anime and pop media space. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited for that because, at first they were like, oh, that's only a guy thing. But now women, we're showing up in these spaces. We're not seeing what we want. and we're making a space for ourselves. I would be curious to go to HotieCon and try and coordinate a group with my friends. And I'm also in a Facebook group called Black Girls Who Cosplay, and it's about us like giving a positive space for our cosplays, because I have seen some misogynoir in the cosplay space, and if you're familiar with Afro Cocoa Puffs and her song, where she's like, Hanana isn't black, Hanana isn't black, she'll be black today. Like, that's the vibe that, we've started showing each other. It's like, we're going to show up as this character in locks, with our afros, with our curves too. And these animators and media outlets are listening. Like, they're building characters based on us. They're giving us the representation that we want because of how much we're speaking up and showing up in these places. So I have so much respect for Blerdcon and DreamCon. I want nothing but the best for them as Black owned and led organizations. And, they're going to have some hiccups. Like, MomoCon is in its 20th year, and they're not perfect. DragonCon is in its 25th year. They're really close in age. But these cons are not perfect. And I think instead of us coming at it with like, I hate this about that con and I'm never going again, we should pause, give them grace, figure out what they can actually fix, and what we as a culture can also hold others accountable, like being our sister or our brother's keeper in these spaces. When there's issues of people being creeps at cons, that's not just the onus of the people who are running the con to work on, but also the people around them. Like, there are a couple of content creators who are starting to make like content about how dangerous some cons can be for women, or just for people in general, how, sometimes predators show up to cons. And it's about educating each other and be like, that person's a predator. Don't go to a party with them. Don't get things from them. We have to just keep holding each other accountable and calling people out as a culture. We should also, make sure we fill out surveys. Like, at the end of cons, people send out surveys. And that's a big deal that people have been making. They're like, you're on social media disparaging this con, saying all these bad things. But when they send out that survey, are you actually responding? Are you saying how you actually feel? Or are you just like ignoring the survey email? Nothing's going to change if you don't say anything. And at the end of the day, I think that there are some changes that can be made. I don't know if like next year DreamCon is going to be a completely different experience based off the feedback that we're given, because like, I don't know how everyone else felt about the streamers being all over the place and streaming the entire experience and showing people out their consent. There might be some people who live for it. Like, you look at the highlight videos that people make, and it seems like everyone's happy to be on camera and everybody's happy to be filmed. They're not going to show the people who are trying to avoid being filmed, or the people who, ignore the streamer when they come up to them. So if we don't see that, then we think that it's okay for this to happen, but we're going to go to cons anticipating that culture of, I'm going to be streamed 24/7. But I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I was just double checking my notes. Okay. Now, see, I'm so nervous about making this video. It's because I don't want to make it seem like I'm just saying so many bad things about DreamCon. I want people who watch this to really take things in consideration when they're trying to figure out which con can they go to. Or maybe you're not a brokey like me. Maybe you're like, I can go to any con I want to. And I'm like, okay, period. Do that. But what happens at Blerd and DreamCon is that they both have cabaret events and comedy shows and cosplay competitions. Those are like the elements of a lot of cons. But the reason why I bring these in comparison with Dream and Blerd is that I liked Blerd's entertainment more. Like I like their comedy show more. Each year they have Roxy Hayes, and sometimes the guest of honor does it. Like Orlando Brown was a headliner comedian when we went a couple years ago, and they're funny. They're funny because they're actual Blerds, and like even this year at Momo, the person who does the comedy show isn't quite a Blerd, but he'll get people who are Blerds or just nerds at Momo, but like they get it. At DreamCon this year, this was the first time I went to a comedy show, and I did not laugh until Roxy Hayes got on stage. I actually cringed the entire comedy show because it did not sound like these people understood the audience, that they understood Blerd. They did not understand that they sounded creepy. They sounded like they needed to put on a list because of how they were talking about Black women in cosplay. That was the vibe that I got from the comedy show at Dream, and I have so much smoke for that as a comedian, as someone who like has been to several comedy shows, Black, white, Asian, all those, and the fact that I went to this one and was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. But that goes into the bigger conversation that people were having about Dream, was that it really just felt like there were so many people who did not get the culture, but they had so much power and influence at the con. Like, it's one thing if you want to just break out into doing the wobble at DreamCon. Like, okay, yeah, cool, we love the wobble. The wobble is great. Like, I actually hate doing it. But, that's something that's celebrating Black culture. And, it's like, okay, you got Luffy doing the wobble with Usagi, with somebody dressed like Cleveland Brown, like, all that happening. But no, we just have random people just starting fights in the middle of the con. Like, we have people like, just doing more like foolish behavior that's unsafe for the crowd, and that's not like really fun. And it's just like, we go to these places to have a good time. And in the Blerd community, there are a lot of people who are like neurodivergent, and so they may already be experiencing like things like overstimulation and just introvertedness, and they're just trying to but they feel comfortable in this space because it's finally a place where they can be celebrated like for who they are. And when they don't get that, like when they put on their cosplay and somebody's like making a video ridiculing them for it, or like going up to them, interacting with them without their consent, that's when it's like, this doesn't feel like it's for Blerds anymore, or it's as welcoming as cons are supposed to be. Instead, it just feels like I'm at just a regular event with a lot of people. But okay, I'm going to get off this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about Blerdcon versus DreamCon. Or you don't have to like debate them. We can also just be like, I had a good time at DreamCon, I don't know what you're talking about. Or if you're like, if you don't agree, if you didn't have a good time at DreamCon, I would love to hear in the comments. I would love to hear like, how can these cons get better? And I really want to build up Black events because we don't have that many. And with the way things are going in our country, we need to be able to make sure that when we do have these spaces, we're building each other up, and not just saying like, oh, well, this went wrong, we shouldn't have it ever again. No, we should definitely have more Dreams, have more Blerds, maybe a couple more Momos, but have more events where we can be Blerdy in ourselves, like Trap Sushi. And yeah. So anyways, have a good week. I'll see you guys eventually. Bye.